Good evening, Mr. Peled. Welcome to
Good
Oda
evening.
TV.
Thank you.
How are you?
Very well, thank you. Nice to be with you.
Nice to meet you too. Now, as Oda TV, we would like to talk to you about Gaza and the Palestine and the crisis over there. But first of all, we would like to introduce you to our readers. And you have already written on your book, The General Son. You already told about your story and your father, but we would like to hear it from you briefly, actually, if you can.
Sure.
Thank
Of
you.
course. So thank you for having me, first of all. The full title of the book is The General Son, Journey of an Israeli in Palestine. So it's the two parts of my story. The first one is being born to a very patriotic Zionist family, Israeli family in Jerusalem. My father was a general. Many members of my family had important positions. My grandfather signed the Israeli Declaration of Independence. He was a Zionist leader before Israel was established. So for me, Zionism is not something that I had to study. I got it every day.
You were born
with dinner,
to it.
with dinner every day at home. All the big family gatherings. It was like all the people that are part of the state, important positions, important people. That was the family, So I always heard about Zionism, about the state, about Zionism, about the state, about the army. These were like the most important issues, how we help, how we contribute, Very, very patriotic. So that's the first part of the book, and that's really the first part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Second part of the book, and the second part of the story is the journey as an Israeli into Palestine. So, we all know today that it's an apartheid regime. So I, of course, was raised and I grew up on the privileged side of the apartheid. But the journey was my stepping outside of the apartheid, of the privileged side of the apartheid, into the other side. The side of the oppressed, the side of the occupied, the side of the ones that don't have the same rights as me, which I didn't know. I didn't know that they don't have we don't know anything about the Palestinians being raised in the Israeli education system. You don't learn anything about the Palestinians. You know that there's a problem. You know that they are terrorists. You know that they are dirty. You know that all these terrible, stereotypes. But the journey allowed me to meet Palestinians, to cross to the other side, to understand what Palestine really is. And what I realized was I wasn't born in Israel. I was born in Palestine, in a colony, which is called Israel, which has been imposed on Palestine and created a whole different reality, a completely different reality than the reality in which Palestinians live. So gradually, this is talking 25 years already that I've been doing this a little bit more than that. I learned about the story of Palestine as Palestine. Then I reached a point where I had to make a decision. Am I going to stay loyal to Zionism and Israel and all of this? Or am I going to stand up for justice and stand up for freedom and stand up for human rights and so on? Because you can't do both. Zionism is a racist ideology. It's a supremacist ideology. It's a very violent ideology. And we see the results of Zionism is the apartheid state and the genocide of the Palestinian people. It's not an accident. So when I got to that intersection, I chose to stand with my Palestinian brothers and sisters and to join the struggle as much as I can for a free Palestine, for their liberation, for their freedom. And today, I'm sitting here at this institution that I founded and now I head, which is called Palestine House of Freedom in Washington, D.C. And our mission is education, but the purpose of the education is to demonstrate that the solution, the peaceful resolution of the question of Palestine is dismantling apartheid and establishing a free democratic Palestine on all of historic Palestine, what's known as from the river to the sea.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our mission. The problem is, of course, everybody is investing in the obstacle to peace, which is the apartheid state, the state of Israel. Everybody's investing in it, supporting it, trading with it, And the narrative, the Zionist narrative, which is based on lies, is prevalent everywhere. That's what you hear everywhere. Mm-hmm. And so it's a very difficult struggle because you have to dismantle the Zionist narrative. Mm-hmm. You have to show people that they've been lied to. In America, the education system is a Zionist education system, same as I grew up on in Israel. They don't know anything about Palestine. Most Americans, or at least half the people you talk to, if you say Palestine, they confuse it with Pakistan. That's the level of education here about Palestine. So that's a struggle, but that's the story. That's kind of been my story, and all of that, of course, is in great detail in the book, in the General Sun.
Yes, it's
as you know, is available in Turkish.
Yes, it's also in Turkish. Yes, it's a great story. So
Thank you.
Your father was a general, Miko Peled, and he was one of the founders of the Israel-Palestine Peace Council, as you told us. And he was an advocate for a two-state solution, but you think that idea has collapsed, right?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of a two-state solution is a Zionist idea. It's a Zionist construct. It's suppose it forgives the crimes of 1948, the massive campaign of ethnic cleansing and massacres of 1948. It assumes that the Zionists should maintain control of the lion's share of Palestine, 80% of Palestine. And it also recognizes that the Palestinians should receive some measure of independence, that some measure of their right to self-determination should be recognized in a tiny Palestinian state that will be controlled by Israel. Now, even that is considered and has been considered a radical, almost treacherous idea. So when my father began speaking about this, while still he was in uniform and after the 1967 war. It wasn't so much a war, it was more an Israeli assault against its neighbors, really, but they call it a war. And so he was still in uniform, and then he said, well, now we can do this thing, this two-state solution thing, give the Palestinians the West Bank and Gaza, they can have a state, and we can have the majority of Palestine, and we move on. And people thought he was crazy. And then he retired from the military, and he had he began, his legacy was pursuing this idea of the two-state solution, meeting with Yasser Arafat and other Palestinian leaders to convince them, which eventually they were convinced, which was a big mistake, to accept the two-state solution, to recognize Israel. And of course, we know today where that led. We can see today where that led. That was a massive strategic mistake on the part of the Palestinian leadership. So he became known as this man of peace, even though he was a general, and in my view, he was a war criminal. And this idea of the two-state solution is misconstrued as an idea for peace, whereas I think it's basically allowing the occupation of Palestine to continue and pretending to recognize Palestinian rights. And there's a reason why it didn't work. I mean, in terms of Zionist ideology, the whole country belongs to the Jews. So there's no room for recognizing Palestinian rights. And that's why we are where we are today.
What do you think about October 7th?
Well, it's not so much what I think, but if we take a look at what happened on October 7th, which, by the way, was exactly 50 years and 1 day after the 1973 war. Yeah. This war, exactly 50 years and 1 day. I don't think that was a coincidence. I mean, I don't know. I don't have any information, but I don't believe it was a coincidence. And what we saw is fighters come out of one of the poorest, most oppressed, most surveilled regions in the world. I mean, basically a concentration camp, which is the Gaza Strip. It's a concentration camp. It was a concentration camp from the beginning. They came, I mean, a place where a glass of water is a luxury, clean water was a luxury already before October 7th. And these fighters came out and they managed to do something that nobody was able to do, which is to completely paralyze the apartheid state. completely paralyzed the apartheid state, and they managed to liberate almost half of Palestine. The entire southern part of Palestine, over 20 settlements and so forth, were liberated really by them. And it showed, I think, more than ever before, but not for the first time, that the whole Israeli military, the Israeli intelligence apparatus is nothing but a paper tiger. Because what these fighters were able to do, and again, the paralysis of the apartheid state is still going on. They haven't recovered. Even though they pretend everything is fine, they have not recovered from this paralysis. They have not recovered from the shock. They did not believe that the Palestinians in Gaza would dare or would be able to do this. And here we are, almost 2 years later, and the response, the Israeli response, has been the response of a gangster, of a bully that has been humiliated. It's revenge. It's the worst kind of revenge. When a bully or a gangster is humiliated, what do? They find the weakest victim, and they take all of their rage and all of their revenge and all of their anger on that victim. And that's what we've seen in Gaza. So the Gaza Strip has been transformed from a concentration camp to a death camp. And that's what we're seeing. And what makes it worse is that, number one, the whole world is watching. I mean, we see it every day. It's live streamed. And we can't get the international community to intervene. It's a Holocaust, and we can't get the international community to intervene. And the second thing is, today we know people are starving. Children are dying from lack of hydration, from infections, from small infections. Children are dying. 5-minute drive out of the concentration camp, out of the death camp. 5-minute drive, there's the abundance of resources. There's no shortage of resources, food, water, medicine. Palestine is a rich country. It's always been a rich country. And they are denied access, and that's why they're dying. It's not that they're somewhere in the middle of I don't know where, and there's no resources, and they need food to be shipped. They don't need food and humanitarian aid to be shipped from across the world and go in through Egypt. They need to be allowed to access the resources that exist in Palestine. So they're being killed, they're being denied access to resources, they're being denied access to medical care, hospitals have been destroyed, schools have been destroyed, shelters are being destroyed, food distribution centers, people are being killed. I don't know what other monstrosity they're going to come up with before the world can wake up and intervene and stop it. Yeah. So that's October 7th, and we're coming upon the second year almost.
And what was army thinking about the siege? Do you have any idea about that?
You're talking about the Gaza city, the city of Gaza.
Yes.
Well, the army works for the government, so they can give their opinion, but they don't get to make the decision. And the government decided to mobilize about 100,000 more troops, 100,000 more troops to go in and take the city of Gaza. And what the army is saying, if you do that, they will kill all the hostages. So if you want to do that, you go ahead, but don't pretend like releasing the hostages is a priority or a goal even, or an objective, because you cannot do this and expect the hostages to be returned. So the army is just being honest about it. What's interesting, however, is that Israeli society is split about 45-55. And the split has two parts to it. I mean, obviously two parts, but the split is over two things. One, those who hate Netanyahu and those who love Netanyahu. And two, those who want to see the hostages released and then continue the genocide. And those who are saying, let's just continue the genocide and not worry about the hostages. That's the split. That's what we're seeing, all the protests we're seeing now by Israelis. These are people that want to stop the genocide for a little bit to release the hostages and then continue the genocide after that. And the ones that are in the government in power don't want to stop. They want to go in and continue the genocide until nobody's left. That's the difference. And the army is going to do what the army is told to do. If the army is told to go in, and they already have, I mean, tens of thousands of reservists have already been mobilized and sent in. So it's already in progress. And they're expecting about 100,000 more forces to go in. what are they going to do? It's all destroyed.
On the other hand, they are talking about this ex-CIA guy, Phil Riley. You know Phil Riley. He's in command of humanitarian, just a second, I will tell you the full name. Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. He's in,
yeah. I know about that, of course.
Yeah. He's in charge of Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. And
which is a disaster, of course, which is a disaster. Palestinians are being murdered there all the time, yeah.
Yeah, and...
Well, you know, the thing is, I think what's important to realize, the United States and Western Europe in particular are invested in the genocide. They're complicit in the genocide. They supply the money, they supply the gun, the weapons, they supply diplomatic cover. They're basically part of the genocide. They're not pulling the trigger, but they are part of the genocide. There's no question about that. And so they come up with all these ridiculous ideas and ridiculous so-called solutions for the humanitarian crisis. I don't know if you remember this. You may remember that 2017 or something like that, the UN came out with a report that by 2020, Gaza, the Gaza Strip, the Gaza concentration camp would be uninhabitable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
By 2020.
Yeah.
That was 5 years ago.
Like 5 years ago, yeah.
That's before October 7.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is they don't want to do anything about it. There's only one thing that can be done about the Gaza concentration camp, and that's to liberate it. After World War II, the Nazi concentration camps, they needed aid, they needed humanitarian support, they needed many things. But first and foremost, they had to be liberated, allowed to move freely, provided with aid, of course, and the regime that created the concentration camps had to be taken down. The same thing applies for Palestine. The regime, which is called Israel, this apartheid, genocidal regime, needs to be dismantled. The Palestinians, whether they are in the Gaza concentration camp, whether they're in ghettos throughout all of Palestine, because Palestinians throughout all of Palestine, in the Nakab in the south, in the Galilee in the north, in Jerusalem, in the ghettos of the West Bank, they live in ghettos. They are terrorized every single day. The life of Palestinians is life under terrorism, and it's been going on for almost 8 decades. There's only one solution: trying to send aid, two-state solution, bring somebody else to control Gaza. All this nonsense is in order to allow Israel to continue the genocide and the ethnic cleansing. So somebody needs to step up and say, enough. There needs to be sanctions. Israel needs to, diplomatic missions need to be closed down. This is a pariah regime. It needs to come down. Instead of attacking Iran all the time, they need to be focused on this genocidal regime that is murdering people every single day. Nobody even knows the exact number because so many people are dead and nobody can find them and nobody can count them. So, they come up with all these ideas, this humanitarian aid, here in the United States, there's so many humanitarian aid organizations. They have millions they have more money than they've ever had. They don't know what to do with the money. They send trucks and they expect that the Israeli regime that is conducting the genocide will allow humanitarian aid. What do they expect? They're conducting a genocide. Why would they allow humanitarian aid? They want people to die. It's like complete madness. People are not thinking. The problem is the regime. No. The problem is the genocidal, racist, violent regime, and it has to be.
Do you have any hopes in near future about this solution? Can anyone
near
do it
future?
In near
no,
future?
I think what we do here in Palestine House of Freedom. Our focus is long term.
Yeah.
Today, there's nothing we can do to save a Palestinian child from starving to death, and that's a horrible thing to know. But if we don't think about tomorrow and next year, it's going to continue. We have to make sure that people understand what is taking place. They need to understand that the Palestinian struggle for liberation is the right struggle, that everybody needs to support it. That this whole idea that somehow Israel has a right and all this is nonsense. It's a regime that has been implanted in Palestine The last 100 years have been a dark chapter in the long, glorious history of Palestine, and it needs to come to an end. This chapter needs to come to an end.
Yeah.
And that's our responsibility as citizens of the world, as people of conscience. It's all of our responsibility because it's happening in front of our very eyes.
Yes.
In front of our very eyes, and our governments are still not doing enough, if anything at all, to stop it. And particularly the government here. I'm not far from the capital here in Washington, D.C., and in London, and in Berlin, and so on. These countries are complicit in a terrible, terrible genocide.
No. At this point, I'd like to say something about your niece. And you have lost a niece in a suicide bombing, right? And after that loss, you are still standing at this point. So you're calling the world, like, standing with you, right? Am I telling right? Is it a brief?
Yeah, the world has to stand up with this, of course, yeah. I mean, all of these deaths as a result of one thing. It's the apartheid state. It's the genocide and oppression of the Palestinian people. When people ask me about the attack when my niece was killed, so 3 young Palestinians killed themselves and killed a bunch of innocent people, including her. She was 12 years old. Yeah. How does that happen? How does that happen? How do we get to a place where something so terrible can happen? And if you start to think about it, then you understand and think about it deeply, which is what I did after that happened. I looked for people to engage with. I looked for Palestinians to engage with. That was that was really the beginning of my journey. Then you realize what the root problem is. Going and killing Palestinians won't help. Building a wall won't help. Starving people won't help. There's only one thing that can help, and that is liberation of Palestine. That's the only thing. But the problem is in the discourse, the term liberation is associated with terrorism. The word free Palestine is associated with terrorism. They did a very good job in convincing people that these terms should not be said. Many people come to me and say, how can you say from the river to the sea? How can you say liberation? It's, people are scared of these things. It's crazy. What's scary about liberation? Liberation is a good thing. Equal rights is a good thing. Human rights, fighting for human rights is a good thing. It's what we should all be doing. And so they were that, and that's the crux of the problem, and it's been like this for almost 100 years. I mean, Palestinians have been living under a regime of terrorism. I mean, the Zionist terrorism in Palestine began before the state of Israel was established by small terrorist groups, bombing cafes, bombing markets, bombing hotels. They have a history before the state was established, killing civilians everywhere, terrorizing people everywhere. That has to stop. The world has got to stand up. There has to be severe sanctions. Exactly, really the only responsible country the only country that's acting responsibly, I would say, are the Yemeni forces. The Yemeni forces by January had blocked the Bab el-Mandeb Straits, and they said, no, there's a genocide going on, and we will not allow it. And it has a huge impact, not only on the economy of the apartheid state, but on the world economy. They said, no, we will not stand for this. And they're paying a very heavy price. The Yemenis are paying an extremely heavy price for standing for Palestine. But they're acting responsibly. That's what the entire world needs to do. You stop it. You stop trade. You close diplomatic missions. You punish this regime, and you bring it down.
Yeah.
And the port of Eilat in the very southern part of Palestine is completely shut down, bankrupt. It was a very important port. They would bring hundreds of thousands of cars every year and so forth, import, done, nothing. And this is thanks to the Yemeni forces standing and blocking the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb. That's an example that I think the history will remember. This, relatively poor country standing up while all the rich countries support the genocide.
Thank you so much, Mr. Peled. Thank you so much for your kind answers and telling all the truths on your side.